Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Town of Clayton Planning Board to order. It's 6 o'clock, and we like to get started on time. It's Tuesday, June 22nd, and so I would ask staff to start our roll call this evening.
Thank you, Chair. So starting with Chair Dupree.
Here.
Vice Chair Applewhite. Here. Board Member Gleason. Board Member Sarowski. Here. Board Member Bland.
Here.
Board Member Carter. Here. Board Member Hooker.
Here.
Board Member Hall.
Here.
Board Member Kearney is excused. And Board Member Durham.
Here.
Thank you, sir. We do have a quorum for this evening.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Jody Dupree. I'm the chair of the Clayton Planning Board. To give you just a little bit of information, the board is composed of volunteer members. None of us are getting paid to be up here. Volunteer members of the public appointed by the Clayton Town Council. If you're in the ETJ, if you're in the city limits, you're the town council. If you're outside the city limits into the planning jurisdiction, then the county commissioners are involved with that appointment. Planning Board is responsible for providing recommendations for conditional and conventional rezonings, text amendments, and town plans. You do need to note that any decisions made here tonight are recommendations only. As a board, we recommend to the town council, who makes all final decisions. We do welcome public input and discussion. We'll have some public comment portions this evening. However, we would ask that when we get to the public comment section, you wait until you're recognized. Then if you would, when you come to the podium, if you would state your name and your address, and we typically give people a maximum of 3 minutes. And if you exceed 3 minutes, we may ask you to conclude. Before we get started, let's start this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I should also tell you this evening, down on the end, Board Member Hooker has recently had a knee replacement. So if you see her stand up and walk around tonight, it's because she cannot stay seated in a single position for very long. So if anyone in here has ever had a joint replaced, you know what she's going through. So she's not losing interest if she gets up and walks away. She's got to stretch her knee a little bit. We think. We don't know that for sure. We assume that she's not losing interest. All right.
Chair Dupree, if I may, sir, we did get a message from Daniel Gleason, board member. He had a family emergency, so he's excused for tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to get started this evening. First on our list tonight is the adjustment of the agenda. Any adjustments to the agenda this evening?
No adjustments, sir. Thank you.
All right. Third on our list is approval of minutes this evening. I'm assuming you've all had a chance to read back through the minutes from the meeting last month. Any motions to be made regarding that?
I move to approve the May 26, 2026 minutes.
We have a motion to approve from Board Member Applewhite. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Board Member Bland. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. First on the list this evening, item 4 of our agenda is the public meeting. This first item, A, is 2026-016 CZM Stoughton Crossings Type 3 conditional rezoning. And we will hear now from staff.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Board. Robert Tate, Senior Planner with the town. Tonight before you is project number 2026-16- CZM, Stoughton Crossings, a Type 3 conditional rezoning. This is a rezoning request for the subject parcel going from the residential R30 Wake County zoning district to the Town of Clayton conditional industrial zoning district. The subject site is approximately 44 acres in size, located outside of the town's corporate limits and ETJ within Wake County's planning jurisdiction on the westerly side of Guy Road and just south of Golden Nugget Drive. Today, the site is currently being used, isn't being used, it's undeveloped and vacant currently. This map shows you the location of the public notice as required for this meeting, which was placed along Guy Road. Next slide shows you the location of that sign on the ground. Here's a picture of that. So as previously noted, the subject site is situated within Wake County's planning jurisdiction. Today, this map on the left shows the R30 zoning and the surrounding zoning in Wake County. The image and map on the right shows the proposed conditional industrial zoning. That's the town of Clayton zoning. And then just to kind of help provide a better picture of the area and existing town of Clayton corporate limits, the map on the bottom shows you where existing town of Clayton corporate limits exist in the area, which is adjacent to this site directly across Guy Road. So that makes this property eligible for annexation into the town of Clayton and also for rezoning per state statute. So really quickly, when evaluating consistency and compatibility with the town adopted policy, as I mentioned, it's outside of our ETJ, so it is not within the policy area. So for that, the request would automatically be an inconsistent request from the future land use map due to there not being a future land use map designation on the site today. If approved, this site would be amended in the future land use map to the employment center designation. The proposed type 3 conditional rezoning includes the concept plan that's shown here on your screen. The concept plan includes several features to include also the sewer and water connections that will be made on the site. The applicant will be responsible for constructing any easements, anything that has to do with connecting to our utility system. So public water and sewer will be initiated, constructed, built, and paid for by the applicant. Additionally, looking a little closer at the concept plan, you'll note several features. The 2 stars indicate where the property will receive access, those 2 right there. And the the pink color depicted on the concept plan indicates where industrial uses would be permitted. The various green shades that you see are either some type of buffer, landscaping, or open space area across the site. And then those blue areas depict where the stormwater control measures would be placed on the site. And then one last thing to note are the pink strips kind of here along Guy Road. Those are just the areas where all of the required TIA off-site improvements would be implemented on the site, across the site. So I want to quickly go over the conditions. The first 7 conditions I won't go over. Those are the standard town of Clayton conditions. So I won't waste your time with that. But I will start with the 8th condition. And that condition would require the applicant to submit a tree report if they would like to mass grade within the required buffer areas and not use to use the existing mature trees in those areas. The 9th condition would exempt the subject site and the applicant from any of the mass grading provisions that are in the UDO. And I'm going to go a little bit further into detail with that in a future slide. So if you do have any questions, I should be able to answer those there. The 10th condition would allow prefabricated canopies to project from the building facade and be allowed as a building material. Condition number 11 lists out all of the permitted principal uses, which are shown here, and it also outlines the permitted secondary uses. Just really quickly, wanted to note that the applicant is proposing the warehouse distribution and storage use, but would be open to the list of uses shown here on this screen. And I'll stay here just for a second for people to take a look. So only the uses that are called explicitly out in these conditions will be allowed on the property. And secondary uses. Condition number 12 identifies the location of all buffers and landscape areas and the treatments for those buffers. The north, south, and west buffers would all be a type D 40-foot buffer. And the southeast boundary of this property, which is also abutting a solar farm, would have a separate treatment due to the fact that it's adjacent to the solar farm. There's an existing easement on the property that prohibits any shadows being casted over the solar farm, so an alternative buffer is proposed there by the applicant. Number 13 identifies locations where perimeter buffers would not be placed. So this includes easements, wetland areas, areas that are used for access, things of that nature. Number 14 would require the applicant to provide at least 2 charging stations across the subject site. And that would also equate to 4 dedicated EV charging stations. Condition number 15 just kind of outlines specifically what are the required offsite improvements that were required by the TIA, which was reviewed by the Town of Clayton and NCDOT staff. Number 16 essentially establishes the heavy industrial dimensional standards to the CZI conditional district. And then 17 is pretty much establishing which UDO this condition of approval, concept plan, and project, concept plan, condition of approval, and how this project was reviewed. So associated with the most recent UDO that was adopted in November of last year. So as usual, your considerations tonight, you are able to make a recommendation to town council. Just note that this rezoning, if approved, would be the approved conditions would follow the land, and that if approved as well, this would be automatically amended in the future land use map to the employment center designation. While planning staff does recommend approval and consistent with the adopted policy, there are 2 areas that staff wanted to note for your consideration as you're making your recommendation tonight. And the first would be a request for the applicant to take a look at the water quality treatment provisions outlined in UDO table 6.17.4. That's regarding the mass grading provisions that they have opted to be exempted from. And the second would be also another look at the conditions of approval by limiting additional industrial uses on the site. And for your reference, got a slide here just to kind of show you what the water conservation quality practice menu items look like here. I'll take a moment to stay on this slide. All right, and then the second slide just lists several of the industrial uses that staff recommends to be removed from the conditions of approval. And these are also located in your agenda packet as well in the staff report. So here are your motion options. Again, staff is recommending approval and consistent with the 2045 comprehensive plan. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions before the applicant comes.
Have any questions of staff? Zucker?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to what is contained in the applicant's water and wastewater allocation request. Has that been made?
I don't know if I can speak directly to that, but I can see, we can come back to that question and see if we can get you an answer, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is Jonathan Ham, Engineering Director. We have not yet received a wastewater allocation request for this particular project. Right now, a lot of our focus from the engineering side has been on the transportation improvements and their design of the sewer that will be constructed up the natural draw to the property through easements that they're working to acquire on behalf of the town, and then also their water connection that will be through Johnston County through our agreement with them. So that's where we are at this time.
guess I was just wondering how we can make a decision on this if we don't have any idea of the amount of water they're going to be requesting for daily use. And I know they can't know that because they don't even know who's going to be on the property, right?
Sure. I'm not sure if the applicant can share any information about what tenants or what that looks like, but my understanding, and Jonathan, feel free to jump in, is that they would have to come in with the wastewater allocation at that time is when staff and the town would review that.
Yeah, and the wastewater allocation request, if it's greater than 10,000 gallons, has to go through council approval.
And that's within the 30% of the total capacity that we can allocate to industrial uses? Okay.
Any other questions of staff?
Yeah, I've got a couple quick ones. Did you guys do an impervious calculation on this? And if so, what did it come back at?
So because we don't have, fixed locations of buildings and other features, that's not provided in this.
Fair enough.
But there are minimums or maximums in the UDO established associated with this. Yes.
Okay. So then I just want to make sure I understood this correctly. So during the negotiation process with the applicant, staff requested that these approximately 10 items be excluded for use, and the applicant would not agree to that. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair. Yes.
Okay. And then secondly, during the process, what was the second one? Staff requested that the applicant meet some of the conditions related to the environmental standards, and that could provide some incentives in lieu of mass grading, and that was not accepted as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Derek?
I have a quick question about the buffers. As type D buffers, for the most part, what is typically considered as a type D buffer?
So first you have the buffer width, which would be 40 feet. There's a provision that allows the buffer to be reduced if a berm or a fence, an opaque fence is provided. And then there is a ratio of plantings for both shrubs, canopy trees, and understory trees.
And is that the most, lack of a better term, aggressive buffer that the UDO requires?
That's correct.
Okay. And then one question on the list of uses, and I think it may have come up in the comments in the neighborhood meeting, was about data centers. Could any of the uses be referred or used as a data center under the?
That's an interesting question. So I think it's possible. I can't say that it can be ruled out entirely. We don't have data center as a principal use in the UDO. So the UDO speaks to unlisted uses as something that would be most like a listed use. So I can say that it's possible, but not likely.
Okay, it's not called out specifically in the list of uses, but there could be another use that's close enough that if they decided to go down that route, it could be
That's correct.
used. Okay,
It's possible. Yes, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Any other questions of the?
I'm sorry, I do have one more. So for the applicant to agree to public water and sewer extensions, there had to be a discussion about where it is, how far away are we?
So the existing end of the system is behind the Walmart shopping center. So they would extend it all the way up and across NC State's property and the neighboring properties to get to this site.
And about estimate on about how far that is?
I can measure it off for you, sir. I just don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
Robert, this is probably more rhetorical than anything else. I find it interesting that, we have a piece of property that's nowhere in our ETJ or town limits, and we're going to annex it. And I get that it's a benefit to the tax base, whether it's, taxes or the utility fees and everything. I find it interesting, though, that was Clayton the first choice for the annexation, or did they talk to Wake County? Can you answer that? Or
I'm not too familiar with the applicant's discussion outside of the town, but I believe they would be more than happy to kind of
Okay, that's
outline that
fine.
process.
Fair
for you.
enough. And this is rhetorical as well. I'm just curious as if the town is going down the road of getting into the satellite annexation business, so they can backfill between satellite annexation into the town center. Again, rhetorical and something to think about, because this is the second case we've had in the last few months of a big satellite annexation request. And I'm not saying that bringing this up to take a position of for or against it. I'm just curious if this is a trend that we're going to see in the future with the town.
So
Again, rhetorical as much as
Sure.
anything.
Sure. So what I will say is that this property is contiguous to corporate limits, to existing corporate limits. And we have seen a lot of increased interest in this area of town, not just along Guy Road, but along Clayton Boulevard. And we believe that is largely due to the construction of 540. And whenever that comes online, that increases access and circulation in the region. So I don't think this will be the last that the town will receive from applicants, but it's certainly one of the first ones on this side of the ETJ.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Bland?
So what I was reading, if I understood correctly, when you annex across the county line, there are tax concessions, there are considerations. Would we reap the benefits tax-wise of annexing this while sharing with Wake County?
I don't know if I can speak entirely to that, but I do know that the town has been looking to kind of diversify our tax base.
Okay.
And that this type of project would achieve that goal.
Understood.
But as far as the conversation around taxes across county lines, I'm not too privy to.
Thank you.
The majority of this is in Johnston County. Just the entrance is not, based on that map. That 40 acres.
The entire subject property is within Wake County.
Reverse, I'm seeing it reverse.
Based on looking at Johnson County GIS, it appears the entire property, subject property at least, is within Wake County.
I got you.
Yeah, this southeast boundary is that county line right there.
Question Mr. Rasky has for you?
So I have two questions. One is, for this zone, what you're saying is the largest buffer they can have is a 40-foot buffer, correct? They can't have anything larger?
They can.
They can.
But the UDO type D buffer is the largest buffer in the code.
But they could do a larger buffer if they offer, or if we make it a condition, right? Because this is a conditional use rezoning.
That's fair. And what I did fail to mention is that the buffer along the residential in this area isn't a larger buffer than what would be required by code. So they are providing that. But to your point, yes, a larger buffer can be proposed.
Okay. And then my second question is, if this was rezoned in Wake County under a similar rezoning, would that be a different buffer? Like, have we done a comparison versus rezoning into Clayton versus rezoning in Wake County to see the differences between, what people may have been promised when they bought a house or lived next to a site?
Sure. What I will share that I know about Wake County zoning and planning is that the county is largely trying to get out of the rezoning and development game and utilities. Mm-hmm. So they are actually advising and wanting the municipalities to kind of gather the properties into their jurisdiction. To your question, I'm not 100% sure.
I just want to know if we did any apples to apples comparison between if it was rezoned in Wake County versus rezoned for
No,
Clayton.
an exercise was done for that. Yes, sir.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
I know it's progressively coming further down Guy Road from 70. Has there been any discussion at all about widening that section of Guy Road? I know they're going to have turn lanes and whatnot, but has there been any discussion about widening it and coordinating all that back?
Sure. So there are some guidance and recommended policy in the CTP for Guy Road. I don't have the exact cross section on the top of my head, but that would be implemented within the town, currently within the town's ETJ. Mm-hmm. And then for this site, there are a list, condition number 15, that lists out those improvements to widen Guy Road.
I would suggest to look at the comp plan, the transportation comp plan, because there is some additional roadways too. It's not just Guy Road, but there's some other row-in networks in this area that were added to the plan to hopefully help disperse the traffic somewhat in the area.
Anyone else with a question of staff?
I do want to make mention, I did get the measurement for you. It's 1.7 of a mile. So almost 1.75 miles of gravity sewer.
Thank you.
And water.
The water's already there. It's just Johnston County's. So we would have a meter off of Johnston County's line, and that's how we would serve it with water.
So billing would be through the town of Clayton? Okay, using the existing 6-inch line that's there, whatever's there. to supply.
Using whatever Johnston County's got there, yeah.
Okay.
And to clarify, it would be the responsibility of the developer to pay for that extension?
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is the applicant here this evening?
Good evening. Thank you for the time. My name is Ben Harris with Stoughton Industrial, and I live at 1320 Wandering Way in Charlotte, North Carolina. Before I go on the presentation, let me say one thing. In order to have a successful development, it requires a partnership. And I've been working with Joe Stallings for a year now. He's been a true partner to help me unlock this site and figure out the connectivity for sewer and water, which I'll go in detail here in a couple of slides. Additionally, it's been a pleasure working with Robert Tate as well to help me navigate through this process. Each town is different. They're trying to work through the challenges in the right way and the procedures to get to this point today. It's been a year. A little bit about Stoughton. We're a national industrial development company. We're headquartered in Chicago. I started in December of 23 to open up the Carolinas office because of the population growth, manufacturing growth we're seeing in the Carolinas today. We've done over $600 million in Class A development, and the list to the right is a group of institutional capital partners, right? So the cream of the crop, blue chips, Clarion Partners, BGO, Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley is in fact our capital partner for our development in Fuquay Arena. We have 12 projects that are delivered or underway. It's about 4.6 million square feet in total, 20 Class A industrial buildings, 7 states, over $635 million in total value, 9 lenders, 10 JV partners. And the property to the left is our first development in North Carolina in the town of Fuquay Arena. All right, so going over the conceptual plan, before we do, we met with the neighbors back in middle of January to address their concerns. And I would say a good chunk of it was related to sight, sound, and trucks, all right? So what we tried to do with the site plan was working with Robert and staff is to have the maximum buffer, which is that type D buffer, 40 feet, with a significant amount of vegetation, which you can see in the bottom screen. Additionally, in one of my conditions, which was brought up by the neighbors, was, hey, if you can, please use the existing trees, the mature trees on site, so you can block out that sight and sound. Which is what we requested in the conditions. When looking at the site plan, you will see the waterway going in the middle of the site. That is our wetland delineation, and we do have a jurisdictional determination from the Corps. And so what we've done is, it's not in this presentation, but we have a site plan to not impact those waters. All right, so we're not going to request a nationwide permit. Additionally, we have 2 access points to the site. The bottom one would be our core access. In the property, we're going to expand Guy Road by about 50%. on our site and also have the turn lanes going in into the site. The access point is for emergency use only. Additionally, as Robert called out, on the bottom, there's a solar panel farm south of the site. There is an easement in place that we cannot have shadows go in, so we requested an adjusted buffer just for that area. All right, this is just in more detail of what we're going to do at the access point. Again, it's widening Guy Road in front of the property and putting in the turn lane, the left turn lane, and the deceleration lane to turn right in the property. All right, so this has been a year of work. All right, so when I came to the town of Clayton to see if there'd be interest to the staff of having this development, there was interest, but they said that your biggest challenge is to connect to sewer. And then this is where Joe Shillings comes in play. He made the introduction to Jack Carell. He made the introduction to NC State. He made the introduction to Matt Stevens. So when we looked at this, we had about 4 or 5 different plans. And originally, I wanted to go down Guy Road, cut through, and then go through underground under the existing neighborhood to connect to the point. But that would require a force main, which was not appealable to the town of Clayton. So that it had to be a gravity-fed sewer. And so to what was asked, it's 1.6, 1.7 miles long. We're going to follow a little creek. It is 100% gravity-fed. It's going to cost me $1.9 million, and we're going to pay for the whole thing, and then we're going to dedicate it to the town of Clayton. That's been in conversations with Clayton for the last year. With NC State, they approved it, but the land's owned by the state of North Carolina. So we've gone back and forth to the state of North Carolina. I am officially approved to go on the final vote on July 7th to have the line go through their property, because they want to be a good partner of the town of Clayton. Matt Stevens and I have negotiated, and the town and Matt Stevens, along with Stoughton, have negotiated an easement agreement that works for the town of Clayton. I believe Matt Stevens is ready to sign this week. With Jack Carell, he's on board. We have a verbal commitment, but he made it clear to me that he will not advance until the state of North Carolina is fully approved, which makes sense, right? It's the bulk of the sewer line. Additionally, to connect to water, and I apologize, I should have drawn a line on Guy Road, but it goes down Guy Road and it's going to cost me $1.1 million. Again, I'm paying for this. Stoughton's paying for this. We're not asking the town of Clayton to pay for a dime, and we'll dedicate everything to the town of Clayton. We believe that's being a good partner and to help the town of Clayton grow as it sees fit. So let me be very clear, right? Like, I've read all the headlines. I know what's going on. No data centers. We are not a data center developer. We're not going to build a data center. It doesn't fit for a data center requirement. We are industrial developers, period, end of story, full stop, all right? This design is for warehouse distribution and light manufacturing, which is what I'm asking to build in this town. It's going to be a Class A development, and we believe that we can get Fortune 100, 500, and 1,000 companies into this park. So before data centers, industrial had a negative stigma, and really people say, I don't want trucks in my community. I don't want trucks. But when you look at, it's more than just distribution. It's more than just trucks. All right. So when you look at the property, what I'm showing is the industrial economic ecosystem. So what happens when this gets built? First, you have increased property values nearby. All right. It is the darling of real estate. People pay over $200 a foot for these buildings. You have a rising tide in property values. You have real estate taxes, which is a huge driver in communities who definitely want to diversify their real estate tax base. You bring in jobs. What do those jobs lead to? It leads to sales tax for gas and vehicle expenses, restaurant, retail, grocery sales, entertainment taxes. So you do have that part of the ecosystem. Additionally, if you can show that there's e-commerce taking place in that industrial facility, you can collect sales tax. The municipality can. And lastly, it's a catalyst for future development. I'm putting in $3 million in utilities that will allow for future development for the town of Clayton if it wants to move forward in the future. So what I did here is just taking a sample list of current tenants in the marketplace that's looking for space. I'm not saying this is who is going to be in there, when we build it. All I'm saying is that these are groups that are in the market today. So you have food and beverage distribution, packaging materials, building materials, especially tied to housing. Raleigh is one of the fastest growing markets in the country. As homes get built, they need materials to store in these warehouses. Plastics manufacturer, automotive and services, doors, and home improvement. This gets cut up, but again, it's just going back over a tenant profile. Building materials and contractor supply, light manufacturing, and I should have put in this too is this is the pharma capital right now of the country. You're going to see more pharmaceuticals tied to light manufacturing or distribution to help out companies like Novo Nordisk. Regional distribution with 3PLs, again, to help out with manufacturers, consumers goods. And then I would say lastly, because we're a little bit far off 70, but I still see an opportunity for one of the smaller buildings for flex showroom space. We do believe that this is a great project that will diversify job creation, it'll attract long-term, high-quality employers, diversify your tax base, and have positive economic growth. I hope I've addressed your concerns and happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions of the applicant? Ms. Hooker?
I think in a couple of places in your meeting with the neighborhood, you referred to this project as a Class A industrial site or a state-of-the-art. What makes it that?
Sure. So again, industrial is probably on the lower tier of what you call like a property, right, of multifamily or office. But what makes state-of-the-art is clear height, so 36-foot clear height that allows for companies to store more goods in a more efficient manner. It'd be concrete tilt-up as well, using materials of concrete tilt-up would be a Class A, more windows, window glazing, having what Robert showed is the ability to have charging stations for EV, more car parking. We're seeing more companies have a hybrid of office and industrial. So when I typically go on a road, like 3 to 4 or 6%, I'm seeing now 10 to 15% of office space utilized in the industrial buildings. And then deeper truck courts as well. So now we have 130 or 185 foot truck courts. So those are the certain things that you would see that would make it state-of-the-art in Class A.
But nothing particularly environmental about any of those things?
So when you do that, we could look at different ways to I wouldn't say call it LEED certified, but you could look at materials to help offset that. It could be the thickness of roofing, the thickness of the concrete panels, so you're using less energy to keep the warehouses warm or cold. It just depends on those materials.
Okay. So I guess one question I have is that I see in the condition number 9 that you didn't choose to adopt any sustainability measures. So wouldn't using a permeable surface for all of the parking, or at least I think you have to use 50% of the parking, wouldn't that be a state-of-the-art option?
I think it has to do, when we look at the site and more particularly in mass grading, we're moving 657,000 cubic yards of soil. It's the most I've ever done in any development I've ever done over the last 8 years. The site slopes heavily north to south. And so I need to be able to utilize mass grading for this development. And that was the biggest conversation that I've had with Robert.
Right. But what about a permeable surface?
I would look at the cost of being able to do that and making sure that I can do something to that effect. I'm not sure if I can do the whole site.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the total truck traffic, you're going to have heavy duty asphalt and concrete because the trucks are going to chew that up. So you want to make sure that you have a long lifetime of the project to allow you to, and that requires heavy duty asphalt and concrete to be able to do that.
Right. And I think one of the questions that the neighbors asked you was, could you estimate the number of truck trips per day? And I guess that's impossible to do since you really don't know who's going to be in there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Blanton?
Just for my clarification, in the area facing the solar field, I understand that the vegetation is going to be shorter, but it will be just as dense. Is that correct? Regardless of whether it's vegetation or berm or a combination of, it'll be as dense. It just won't be as tall. Is that correct?
It's here. So that is the proposed, on the top is the proposed alternative landscaping in front of the solar field. So it's not as dense and it's not as tall.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate the comments you mentioned about, you've worked with Joe on this, and, it's appreciated what you guys are offering to do here as far as the tie-in with the sewer and the water. That's big. Let's take one step back, and I'm just curious. So when you identified this site, and you identified it knowing what you wanted to use it for, right at that point, and I'm just curious, why Clayton? Why not Wake County? Why not taking Joe out of the equation? I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, look,
why not Garner?
When we evaluated the site, we look at, what are the contiguous corporate limits, right? And so we saw that with a ton of Clayton and I saw a path forward. And it's really that. I mean, how would you say this? That while I'm an industrial developer and I do real estate, I'm in the relationship business. And finding relationships with communities, it's not as easy as you think. It's tough. And so to find an opportunity to work with a town of Clayton where the staff has told me that they want development in their community, and were willing to help me out, figure it out with sewer, it was a no-brainer.
That's a very good segue then. Staff has asked for a couple of things in here that you guys have said no to. And I'm just going to read a couple of these. And sure. I don't think that these would be too much to ask. Use of central air conditioners that are Energy Star qualified, that should be a gimme. That's one of the items that would give you the qualification that staff has asked for. That's in schedule, that's in Group A. Provision of skylights in an amount necessary to ensure natural lighting is provided to at least 15% of the habitable rooms in the structure. I'm assuming like a lot of industrial warehouses, this will have the skylighting.
We'll have 3-story windows, correct.
That will provide that lighting.
Correct.
So there's several things I see in here that, in my experience, are fairly easy things for an industrial developer to include in the development. So I'm just curious why the resistance to do that.
So I think there was a full transparency, I think there was a miscommunication of what we were talking about, because quite frankly, where I was really focused on is mass grading. That's it. Because if I can't do mass grading, then I can't do the project. So these various things, this was not brought up in detail to me till tonight. And so I don't know how to say that, but we're open. So what I'm trying to say is this.
Excuse me, Chair Carter. So just point of clarification, the section of the UDO that you're referring to is correct, but the section of the table is incorrect. It's only the water conservation and quality protection practices, not including the others.
So where are we talking about in the table then? And my apologies.
So if you go down, if you're looking. at
Water
the-
conservation and
Yes,
quality.
sir.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Fair enough. My apologies. Yep.
All right. Anyone else?
Chair.
Yes, go right ahead, Mr. Russell.
So I have two questions. One is if you are telling us undoubtedly that data centers will not be on this site, are you willing to put that as a condition of the
Yes.
rezoning? Okay, that's number one. Number two, are you willing to go larger on your buffers?
Depends.
Okay.
I think that's a discussion of how big. And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of the site that I can't use for various reasons. And so for me to make it pencil, like we're trying to work in the confines that were put forth with, in front of us and to make it work, which it does today. So I gotta, it's tough.
Okay. I'm just
Sure.
asking to just see what your take
Sure.
was. So.
Mr. Applewhite?
Thank you. A couple of questions. I think you had answered this one earlier. Has there been a final jurisdictional determination by the Army Corps?
Yes.
Okay, so that's handled and we're good to go on that side?
It's done for the site, correct.
Perfect. And I think you make a good point about being in the relationship business. Obviously, there's a group of folks that are going to live very close to the site. I live on the western side of downtown. There's a distribution facility close by. They're a great neighbor. I don't have trucks that go up and down my street. Unfortunately, Guy Road is going to be limited by the scope of where they can enter and leave this parcel. Without understanding who may be in the buildings in the end, have there been considerations of parking for the trucks, if they have no more drive time left to park on site, or are they going to be left to try to find somewhere near Guy Road or 70 to park?
Sure. So kind of what you're talking about is actually a massive cross-dock throughput facility where you see a lot of trucks coming in and out of the project, where if there's a long queue, then they'll have to be put, they'll go somewhere off-site, right? And you don't want that.
Right.
And so let me be very clear. We are not building a cross-dock facility. This is not a cross-dock location. These are going to be rear load buildings, all right? So rear load being that the front is all office, and then the back is going to be a truck quarter, right?
Okay.
And so there would be zero scenario for there to be any queuing whatsoever, because this is not that project.
Is the rear the part that faces these people's houses?
It is. And the reason why is just how it lays out on the site with the geometry of the site.
Okay.
And, one other consideration, there are very specific uses in here that are heavier in nature. And I think, we as the planning board have to rely on, when it gets to the site plan phase for staff, and ultimately town council has to rely on staff when it gets to the site plan phase. We're very cognizant of the list of uses because they will have implications on the final site plan. And I think that, while it's hard for us to understand what may be on the site in the future or what, folks may be looking at to locate here, but there's going to have to be some level of communication between staff and, of course, the applicant over how those spillover effects are going to impact neighbors. And the site plan phase is going to be incredibly important here. And the reality is, as far as our responsibility on the planning board is to look at the rezoning request. We're not going to see the site plan. But to your point about the relationship business, it's going to be incredibly important that any adjustments to the site plan that deviate from the concept plan, or even slightly change it, whether it's buffers are going to be in the conditions of approval, but parking may not be. Are there going to be sufficient places? If in the end, there are trucks that happen to be staying on Guy Road for the evening, that's going to be incredibly important. And I have some other questions, but I don't want us to leave that point of that there will be an obligation on staff and on the applicant to, when it comes to site plan, that this is buttoned up and done really well. And that's why we have the questions we have, because we can only do but so much without seeing the actual site in front of us. And one other item that I think will come up is you mentioned earlier that you heard from neighbors on light and noise. What sort of plans do y'all have to address those when they ultimately do arise after development?
Yeah, so doing this for 8 years, I've had some developments that were literally right, like there's more space on this property where you do have that buffer between the residents and the actual project. Where I've had truck course right up on the neighbors' backyards, and we built this wall, but what we found out is that the best absorbent of sound is berms and trees and bushes. It absorbs the sound and it looks good. All right. And so that's why again, I had that condition in there, say, hey, as we're working through the planning stage and I do my topo analysis, I work with my civil engineer, how can we keep the existing trees in the 40-foot buffer to absorb that sound? We're going to try and do that. So that's definitely part of the plan. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is part of that site planning process.
And I do think the berms could be helpful, but ultimately, and I think this is something that everybody will acknowledge at some point this evening, is that there is change coming to this area between Wake and Johnson County. There's a lot of growth. 540 is going to come through. And, we have to deal with the cases before us now. But it is going to be incumbent on the folks that locate here, you included, to make sure that we mitigate the concerns of people that have lived here a long time. And I think, we're going to hear from folks here shortly that are going to have a lot of feedback. And then we'll have some time to deliberate afterwards. So just take those notes, and certainly you'll hear from the remainder of the planning board after that point.
Yes, sir.
All right, go right ahead, Mr. Carl.
One more last one. I just want to make sure between staff and you that we're on the same page on this. So in the agenda packet on page 22, the diagram we have is showing, I just want to make sure that we're talking about a separate second parcel that is incorporated in this concept plan that's not showing. I just want to make sure, just for the sake of clarity, that this is included in what we're talking about.
So the second separate parcel, if you look at the top of the concept plan, it's actually a piece that's on the top left-hand corner that is a part of this as well, and that's included in this plan right here.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's on one we had, it was missing. I just wanted to make sure that it was included in what we're talking about. So very good. Thank you.
Yeah, one more question. The two EV charging stations that are currently planned for the site, are those only for the use of the employees on site, or will they be public charging stations?
I would say it'd be for the employees. I didn't consider it being a public, like for anyone to come on site. I don't think that would be conducive for the people operating their business as well. So I would say it'd be for the employees operating the property.
Anyone else with questions of the applicant?
Chair Dupree, if I may.
Yes.
Staff has been hearing some of the conversation. We have some points of clarification and some more information for the board to consider.
Okay.
If I can invite Robert to comment on some of the items that were brought forward, and then Joe Stallings, our Economic Development Director.
So I wanted to bring up the cross-section that's called out for Guy Road in the CTP, just for your awareness, is on average 120-foot right-of-way, and that would include 4 travel lanes, a multi-use path, sidewalk, and a median. And then the second point of clarification, I think we have resolved, but just wanted to make sure about the sustainable development incentive practices, the menu that we talked about, that the mass grading only speaks to the water conservation and quality protection. So just wanted to provide those 2 points.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more thing I want to say. It was brought up earlier by Deborah about water usage. So we did run some early calcs, and we are below the 10,000 gallons. I think it's around 9,500, right? Right, it's like between 999 and 9,500, but it's right around there.
And Chair Dupree, with our Economic Development Director, there's not enough room on the tables here for our staff, but Mr. Joe Stallings, our Economic Development Director, can speak to the county tax question. He can.
Are we done with the applicant for right this second? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Dupree, Planning Board, pleasure to be with you all this evening. Joe Stallings, Economic Development Director. One of the questions that Member Bland had was regarding the county tax rate and the sharing of those taxes. It's important to know that whenever this property, if it is to be annexed, it will be annexed at the full town levy. This town currently actually has property within Wake County that is also subject to the town's levy. That levy would be collected by the county and then remitted back to this government in the form of payment, just like all the other parcels of which the town of Clayton has authority over in Wake County. As you all may be very well aware, the town council has given my department a pretty explicit directive to help balance the tax base here in town. And this is a part of those efforts. My office, since I came on about February of last year, has received over 170 requests for proposals or requests for information for companies looking in the state of North Carolina. A lot of those companies are requesting buildings such as these. And unfortunately, we do not have a great stock of those. It is getting better. We have a number of industrial parks that are coming online, but certainly this would help add to that mix and allow us to be more aggressive whenever we go out and recruit new companies. The other thing that I think is of particular importance is that we are not incentivizing any of these. Public dollars are not flowing into these projects. They're certainly not flowing into this project. We are working with our development partners and others to help make connections, to help ensure that those easements could be delivered as needed to make the project happen. The other piece too that I would make mention of is that we have the statutory right. The North Carolina state law says that properties that are closer to our contiguous limits than those of another municipality can and should fall to the government, of which the parcel is more closely located. This parcel being immediately adjacent to our corporate contiguous limits not only allows us to, but as a matter of fact, it's statutory obligates, but it allows us to. It states that we have the right to annex it and service it under the law. And that's exactly what we are planning on doing if this board and the town council so chooses. The other thing to note too is that more recently, the town of Garner did approve and Maris Development did construct an industrial warehouse product much similar to this right up the street across from Golden Nugget Drive there, although it's not that far away. That building is immediately adjacent to our corporate contiguous limits, which I can tell you now where we stand that we would contest that. That was an opportunity for this government to continue building upon its non-residential tax base in that area. Shame on us for not exerting our rights under the law, but I can tell you as far as the government is concerned here, we do not see any issue with us being able to service this from a public safety perspective, from a water sewer perspective, and it will help us better reach our goal of trying to diversify our local tax base and in theory, or at least certainly in hope, drive down the cost burden of government on our residential folks here in town. So thank you all for your consideration. Certainly if there's any economic development questions, I'm happy to answer, but I'll leave the real development questions up to the experts.
Go ahead.
Good evening. There are no plans, nor is Clayton allowed to involuntary annex any property that is not requested to be annexed into the town.
That is absolutely correct.
So the neighbors, other folks nearby, unless they petition the town of Clayton to annex them, cannot be annexed.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
And from you said that it is contiguous to the corporate limits from across the road, and arguably there would be no other closer government outside of Wake County, obviously, but town government that could annex this property.
No, I mean, there is no, our contiguous corporate limits is immediately adjacent versus the closest other municipality, which would be the town of Garner. They would not have essentially, for lack of a better word, first dibs, if you
Right,
like
it's not
to consider.
contiguous.
Correct.
Okay.
All of their properties east of the I-540 are satellite annexed.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, this is the opening of the public comment section. I would just ask when you come up to speak, we're going to ask staff to keep a 3-minute limit on everyone. If you would state your name, state your address. The only thing I would say, just for the sake of time, I want everybody that wants to speak to get an opportunity to speak. But if you have not spoken and there's already been 2 or 3 people who've said exactly what you want to say, we will assume that you agree with them. Please don't stand up and have to say the exact same thing someone before you said, unless you don't feel like it was said firmly enough or properly enough, if that makes sense.
Chair, can I make one request as well?
Sure.
I just want to make sure we talked about data centers. I want to make sure that we don't talk about data centers during the public comment. We already established it's not going to be a data center, so I want to make sure.
Big enough to be a data center.
What's that?
I don't think it's big enough to be a data center.
I'm just saying, I just want to make sure that that's not going to be a part of the discussion. I don't want us to get mired into the data center
I got you.
conversation. That's all.
Yeah, I
Thank
got
you.
All right, who would like to be first from the public? Somebody's got to be first. Who's it going to be? Come on up, sir. After him, you don't have to raise your hand. When his 3 minutes is up and he turns to sit down, just pop up like popcorn and one at a time.
Hi, my name is Luke Newsom, and I'm at 4345 Guy Road, which is that like chunk that's eaten out of the top northeast corner there. So I'll be front row to this whole, concrete tilt-up facility. And I'm an architect in the state of North Carolina, and I'm also a LEED certified professional. So it's interesting whoever mentioned that, but I think that would be something that would be really important if it does have to be here. But I'm a little bit more like personally attached to all of this in the area because the whole pink blob is where I grew up, running through the woods and running through the halls of the historic home that's right where that big, beautiful pond is. And I know that over the years for that house specifically, multiple different agencies have reached out for like historical registrations and so forth. It's actually a very important like architectural relic for the St. Mary's Township, which is that area, which is the Auburn community. And the property owners there were the Gowers. They were a historic family in the area, and the home is from 1861. So it has a huge like historical significance. Also, the produce and everything that have been produced on this land for like all of my life has probably fed many people in this community because I used to sell it on the side of the road. But I don't know, I'd just like to say that I'm pretty much against this, but if I have to live next to it, then I want it to be LEED Platinum if it's possible, with buffers all around so that nobody can see or hear it at all. But that's pretty much it. It's just, thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Excuse me, I'm not much of a speaker, but anyway, I'm Albert Newsom. That was my son. I live with that driveway or whatever that's going to come in beside my house and go all the way down that road to the solar panels. Not one of these people have said one word to me about it at all. All of a sudden, it's going to be here. Not one soul. And also, Wake County does not know anything at all about it being put there. So I called the Wake County Planning Board. They know absolutely nothing about it at all. So I don't know if that helps y'all. Well, I heard somebody ask that question a while ago. So that's the reason I was making that statement. But anyway, I've lived there since I was 5 years old. And that whole piece there, where they would come in and come by me, I don't know what they think they're going to do there, but like I said, like Luke said, he said a lot what I said. We've lived there my whole life. And I can't imagine how that anywhere on Guy Road can ever hold that amount of traffic. I've been there the whole life. It's been over, in the last 15 years, there's been over 30, 35 wrecks on Guy Road. What's going to happen when 200, they told me before it's going to be 200 to 400 cars and vehicles is going to be because of that thing, that place. So that's Guy Road. So if y'all can enhance me how that road's going to handle that, it's going to be a 4-lane massive road. It's going to have to put in before they ever do anything. And it's what it looks like to me. So anyway, I can't see where it's any purpose at all for anybody until they just, if it was a housing development, yes, fine, that would be all right. But I can't see how that can do it on Guy Road with that many traffic at one time, and it being transfer trucks and cars and whatever else it might be. So anyway, I'll leave. But it is no way I can see where that would work. Sorry.
I would ask, just for the sake of time, I know whoever stands up and speaks against it, you're all for them saying it. Please don't clap. It's just going to spread things out tonight and make you be here till midnight. Who's next? We assume you agree with him. Come on, sir. You're fine. Come on. You're right here first.
Lee Odom, 4013 49ers Road. I'm toward the top left corner, that little street that goes, I'm right above it. And as someone said earlier, I'm looking at an earlier map, I think. I don't see anything in this northern corner portion here.
If you would stand in front of the microphone, because we record these, sir, so we just have it.
I mean, it's showing pink up here now, but the previous map that everyone received, this little wedge here was out. I think someone mentioned something about that, but right now this is showing no buffer, no trees. I don't know if that green up there now indicates buffer and trees or not. I know he was talking about it's a really slope grade from north to south, and he's going to have to do heavy grading, he said. I mean, I don't know if they can put a berm up there, and, because they might need water to go that direction, and, but it feels funny to be here. I mean, 4013 is in Wake County. I don't think I'm standing in Wake County right now, and, what does zoning even mean anymore? I mean, it's residential, industrial. He said he's working within the confines. Well, no, he's trying to change the confines because it's residential. And as I said, he said the massive grading, it's going to take massive grading on this thing. And I mean, 72 total loading docks, 81 trailer spaces, 63 at the large building, 14 at the small. And the two buildings are rotated and wedged in a Frankenstein fit. They didn't want to spend the money to correctly orientate it to the neighborhood and give a decent setback from existing residential. I drive through Clayton, I don't see any retail establishment rotated and wedged in. I don't see any industrial establishments rotated and wedged in. I don't see any government buildings rotated and wedged in. At the initial meeting, I asked him, can you make a profit with one building instead of cramming so many in? The eyes glazed and they went to another topic. If this was a Spirit Halloween store that would go away November 1st, that'd be one thing. But the developer isn't, the Clayton government isn't, but the residents are stuck with this forever. One building, setback more.
You? Come on up, sir.
Hello, Rob Parent, 3217 Golden Nugget Drive, 300 feet from where this development's going to be started. 300 feet means I could hit a home run from my house over your buffer, right? So when you're talking about industrial, what comes along with industrial is industrial waste. We don't even know what kind of impact that's going to have on our homes because we don't even know what industries are going to be in this complex. What really brings worry to me is we're all on well water. So it doesn't matter how high you build that buffer. If contaminants go underground, it impacts our wells, right? Which means it impacts the entire population of everybody sitting in here. And you could possibly be poisoning a good residential, neighborhood, right? So along with that, a lot of us were Wake County residents, right? So you're making a decision in Clayton that's impacting Wake County residents. So it kind of bothers me that Wake County doesn't have a presence here to speak up for its residents if they are in disagreement with us, right? So all of the tax gains and money that you're going to be receiving is not going to really benefit us, the people that you're most likely harming and the people that have the most concern about this. So I ask you not to just think about the taxes and the money, but to think about the humanity of the people living in the surroundings and how it impacts us and could possibly really impact our families and force us to move. So that's it. Thank you.
Kevin West, 4016 49ers Road, right across from the guy that just spoke too much. There was a blatant fabrication told earlier that this would increase property values. That's a blatant fabrication. If you put this in and start to build other industrial complexes, it'll increase the property values for industrial complexes but the little guy like me, it'll destroy the property value of my home. We have a house sitting in our neighborhood that's been on the market for a month now since this started and isn't selling, when property in Wake County is selling like crazy right now. And that's all I got to say about it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Robert Lafebre. I live in the top left corner, 4005 49ers Road. My biggest concern is, besides the noise and everything and the eyesore, every one of these properties, we have well water. And currently with 540 construction, I've already noticed I'm having to change my filter from the red clay that's getting into the aqueduct. I'm changing my filter twice as often as I used to. And now with this construction that is possibly going to happen, I think that's a problem. It's, we lived out in the country. We didn't have to worry about our well water, and now we're having to start to worry about it. And we don't have another option, so. What's that? No, we don't have any option for city water. Not that I want it, but like the previous gentleman said, we're in Wake County, and I was really confused when I had to come to the town of Clayton, which is in Johnson County. I was confused as to why we're coming to Johnson County for this meeting. So it just, I don't think it was part of the master development for Wake County. So this annexation is a little disturbing. I want to say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Stugg, and I'm at 4020 49ers Road. And I'm completely opposed to changing this land from residential to industrial. We are a quiet, well-established neighborhood. And when you look at this map, this industrial facility is located between two residential areas, in all residential zoned areas. And this is not compatible with the surrounding community and would seriously affect our quality of life and the quality of life of the neighborhood south of us as well. We all worked hard for our homes. Most people would not knowingly choose to buy a home beside industrial zoning. And like many others, I'm also very concerned this will hurt our property values, increase traffic, noise, create an eyesore, and put our private well at risk. As was mentioned, and not to repeat others, all of us rely on private wells. And if they plan to redirect rainwater, I'm concerned how that would affect our groundwater recharge, our runoff, the drainage, and our wells. The presentation did not adequately address private wells or property values, nor were the residents addressed directly. I understand that the company is presenting projected economic benefits, but that cannot be guaranteed, nor can what the facility will ultimately be used for. What is guaranteed, however, is the effect on the nearby residents. The only development that makes sense beside a residential neighborhood is residential development, and I would urge the company to find land elsewhere that is already properly zoned for industrial use and compatible with this type of project. Please deny this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Scarpa. I live at 1304 Noose Ridge Drive, Clayton, North Carolina. Hi, Jason. My neighbor. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen of the planning board, is that I'm here to address more than just this specific this particular project, but the broader issues that your decision here will impact. The first thing I want to note, not in any particular order, is that right now in the town of Clayton, we're under water restrictions. Nobody has addressed the issue in this particular instance of an industrial location as to where they're going to draw their water from. I'd ask the town to address that question as to where the staff, if they can tell us, if this project is going to draw on the water that I draw on, and I'm already being restricted, that's a serious issue. We're putting the cart before the horse. Industrial development is a great thing. I am as supportive as any of you, maybe more. I'd like to lower our taxes, keep our taxes low. But here's the problem. If we destroy the neighborhood because we deplete our water resources, we've done incredible damage. The Neuse River is only capable of providing so much water. The rainfall isn't as predictable as it once was. We're not getting as much rainfall as we need. So where's the water going to come from? If we're going to be drilling down, and these people here, God help them, if their water if they're coming from wells and the wells are destroyed, where are they supposed to get their water from? We don't have enough water in Clayton as it is. So my suggestion to the board is that you never, except in extraordinary circumstances, approve of any project whatsoever which is inconsistent with the master plan. What the hell is the master plan for if we don't adhere to it? This staff has on any number of occasions, and I go to every town board meeting. Some of you may have seen me. It's very frustrating when the staff recommends approval inconsistent with the master plan. Why? The master plan was argued about. It was enacted into law for a reason. Let's stick to it, except in rare instances where it just no longer makes sense. So in any case, what I'm suggesting is a moratorium on building in Clayton or anywhere in the area until we resolve the infrastructure that needs to be resolved in terms of our water resources. If you don't do that, we're on a very short leash to destruction. That's my statement. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sean Martin. I'm at 4021 49ers Road, and I've noticed that the majority of the people that are here that are speaking up are the ones that are closest to the buffer. If you notice, some of the properties are longer, so the length of the woods and stuff behind their house is going to be more of a natural buffer to this property. Where I'm at, a 40-foot buffer to the back of my property means the parking lot is going to be 40 feet from my from the back of my yard, and there's no space between the back of my house and that property line. So with using the most minimal amount of buffer, it means that I know for myself, if I was to look at this property after this development was built, I wouldn't buy it. So that means the value has to depreciate. The value of my property can't appreciate because there's a warehouse in a parking lot 40 feet from the back of my property line. It's an invasion of privacy. That amount of space means anybody driving through the parking lot anytime, day or night, all the lights of the cars driving through, semi trucks, any kind of work that's being done, any of the manufacturing that's being done, that small of a buffer, I'm going to hear all of it all the time, especially if it's allowed day and night. You know, we have noise violation laws in our neighborhood. You can't make certain amounts of noise after certain periods of time. I'd be curious as to whether this industrial complex is going to have to adhere to that or not. I noticed on the original map that they had before, it actually had the site development for the building itself. It had details of the parking lot, where the parking lot space was going to be. In the original one, it didn't have anything about where the water's coming through, but there is water behind me. So when I moved in, I was told there's an easement. I don't know if from this plan, I don't know how much of the easement is going to be, moved into where the natural water line is. There's a creek that runs behind the property there. But for me, the people that are closest to this are going to be the most impacted, not necessarily just because they live in the neighborhood. If you've got more land that's longer between you and the property, it's not going to impact you as much. But for me, because I'm right at it, probably, let's see, 1, 2, 3 from the top, right above the green, little dark green waterway area. So from where I'm at, the land behind us has been developed not that long ago. And so there is no there's no developed buffer as is. The trees aren't well established. They're small. That land has been cleared before behind me. The previous, whoever cleared it actually left one big tree right on our fence line, I guess just because they couldn't figure out how to fell it. On the creek line, there's developed trees because they couldn't clear it along the creek. But the rest of it is pretty small stuff. So whatever they have to build is going to be whatever buffer they provide, which was in that chart that they showed of where the trees and the bushes and maybe a berm. But for me, I know I wouldn't have moved into this property if I saw a warehouse behind it. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Andrew Ard. I'm at 4041 49ers Road. I'm about 3 lots down from the little wetlands. Just for reference, the 40-foot buffer in that area, I know others talked about it. I'm going to talk about it again. Just not enough to shield us from headlights and noise from the buildings. I just don't think there's any way they'll do it. Also, I want to comment on the this zoning is not consistent with your own land plan and Wake County's land plan. It just doesn't jive. And also, as far as gentleman talking about the historic house on the property, Wake County has a map that has the entire property as a historic property. I'm assuming they did a phase 1 to follow up on that. I don't know if they did or not, but it is, according to Wake County, a historic property, the entire 43 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I will close the public portion of this item and turn it over to this board for deliberation and anything you have to say.
Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate for the applicant to come back up to address some of the issues raised by the neighbors?
I'm fine with that. You'd like to come back up? It'll help us make a decision. I'm all for it.
I think since it's most recent, on the historic property, was that an issue and at any point during the evaluation of the property or the home that's on the property?
Evaluated. So the house is not fully registered as an historic house. It could be registered as a historic house. That makes sense. So when we ran the database search, that's what we discovered. Now, what would trigger the whole thing with the historic house is if I am impacting the wetlands and it triggers a whole review, which I'm not doing. With regards to a historic house, what I've seen in the past, and what I've been told by some of my consultants, that there are groups that would disassemble the house, take it and rebuild it and bring it somewhere else. If there's someone that wanted to do that, we're not opposed to that.
Are y'all the current owners of the property?
No, we're not.
Okay, and y'all are representing the property owner in the application, I presume?
Correct.
Have they raised any issue about the house?
They did not.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all you needed from him?
I had one. So one of the gentlemen addressed the solar farm. Is there an easement to that? Because when you look at the overhead, it appears that access to that solar farm is
Yes.
through this property.
Correct.
So there is a easement, and basically looking at all the plats, I see, seems like everybody's related here. There's been some conversations about how they will be able to access that in the future.
So the design incorporates that, like, I am bound, assuming we acquire the property, I'm bound to that easement agreement to grant them access to the solar farm. And so we have a design that incorporates that and using the road that they use today. So yes.
I presume that on the graphic, there's a small area that's noted as cross-access. I presume that's where you would access the solar farm from?
That's correct.
Okay. And while I'm speaking, obviously buffers are a concern. I think you've addressed it very well, coming from the standpoint of landscape architect. I love buffers, vegetative buffers. I'm also aware that you can plant too heavy of a buffer and find yourself 5-10 years down the road having to take half of your buffer out because everything's just grown in and trees aren't thriving because there are too many. That's just an aside on buffers. Probably the big thing I'm curious about is, has anyone addressed the concern over the adjacent property owners' wells or their concerns about their wells being impacted by this development?
Have we addressed the concerns?
Yeah,
with the wells?
has it come up in your meetings and your concerns? Have you looked into it?
Yeah, in the neighborhood meeting, the wells did come up as a concern. I don't know how, I don't have the best solution for that during the development, yes.
That's fine. I know we have, the subdivision I live in has development, some commercial, mainly a lot of medical facility development adjacent to us. But we haven't seen any issues with our wells. Again, this is just an aside. Just curious about that. Thank you.
And I'm not an expert on wells either. I think, it's important that there is no adverse impact to the property owner. So is anybody on the team with you that can speak to, if they mass grade the property, the impact to the wells?
Yeah, I can help speak to that. My name is Will Swearingen. I'm with Bolton and Mink, the civil engineer. I'm working with Ben here on this project. So to touch on that, I think there can definitely be some more studies that we investigate this more. But from a baseline perspective, we'd be maintaining all kind of state required erosion control measures to make sure there's no extra sediment getting into the stream or into these areas. So that would be a requirement that we would have to go through as we mass grade the site. The other aspect of this is from a stormwater perspective, of not kind of draining the stream that kind of goes there. So that's why we have 2 SCMs. These blue areas proposed on our site is to make sure that we still maintain those existing creek and we're not diverting water too heavily or completely cutting it off altogether to try to mitigate that concern exactly.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Dupree, we have our engineering director, Jonathan Ham. He might be able to chime in a little bit about the wells as well and impervious surfaces.
Okay. So with the stormwater treatment that they're proposing, it keeps it at the surface. They're not proposing, I don't believe, any infiltration that would put additional water into the groundwater table. As far as the wells themselves, it would largely be dependent on where they are in relation to the property in terms of that sphere of influence around a well where it's coming down. And so that would have to be something that, they would have to reach out to Wake County Environmental Health on, because Wake County Environmental Health manages those wells in terms of the permits.
And Chair Dupree, if I might add, I know we want to move on. Board Member Sarowski had a good question about Wake County. I did look up the zoning district. It's R30, 30,000 square foot lots. It looks like based on the the hard numbers with the size of the property, that would probably get around 62 homes, single family detached. It's a permitted use by right in the Wake County land use table, article, I wrote it down, 4-11 table. And then per that, in the Article 16-10-2 of their buffer matrix, it looks like there would be no buffer applicable for a similar type of development to occur on the adjacent property.
Anyone else have anything to say? Somebody like to make a motion?
Let me just make one thing real quick, Chair. This property is going to be redeveloped. It's too close to 540. It's on a major corridor. There's already an industrial building that's built right across the street, and industrial has been pretty much the name of the game in this area. I mean, the amount of industrial buildings that have popped up along US 70 in this area have been tremendous, and there is more coming. I know there's more coming to the town along that corridor. So a lot of that infill between Guy Road and where the shopping centers, where the Walmart is, will be infilled with other development. It's going to happen. It's a matter of whether on this site, whether it should be residential or industrial or commercial or something else, but this property will be redeveloped at some point. And it is within the property owner's rights to sell the property. I mean, we can't forget that as well, that it is within that right. And so the decision we need to make is that, is this the most appropriate use? I do want to mention that the main reason it's inconsistent is because it is outside the town limits, not because it's inconsistent with any plan. It's just inconsistent because it's outside the town limits. Right. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that as well. But as far as how it fits into the area, I think because of the decisions that the state made a long time ago with where 540 is going to go, that led the path of where this area is heading towards. I live in a neighborhood that's not far off of 540, and I know that I'm going to have some major changes coming up here in the next few years, and potentially making some changes myself because of where I live. So I understand the plight of the folks here, but I also it's a tough decision because we're kind of caught in the middle of, well, it's kind of where it's where the state has almost said this is where the growth needs to go. So I just wanted to just throw those things out there.
And I know from having sat here for a number of years now that if this were a subdivision getting built next to you, I've sat here and heard enough people stand up that they don't want a subdivision next to them either. I know compared to this, you'd probably rather have a subdivision, but I've sat here enough and had enough people stand up. Nobody ever wants anything built anywhere near them. I get that. But we have to decide also, as you say, there's going to be development here at some point. Is this the right development? I'll entertain a motion one way or the other. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not in support of this tonight myself. You can, Randall. That's what we're here for.
As far as affecting the aquifer, though, the reason why
You're talking to the microphone, Randall.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. As far as affecting the aquifer, usually the 540 work, it had blasting going on, and they were doing boring, and that can have an effect on the aquifer. If there's no boring or blasting going on the there's a difference between mass grading and getting rid of everything, and that would have some that development won't have as much of an effect as what 540 would on the aquifer, because they've got to basically cut a trench through somewhere that didn't have a trench, and the only way to do that is to do boring and blasting usually. So that's my 2 cents.
And I don't think when we're told that this will help property values, I would have to say it would help property values if you intend to sell your property for some industrial use. If you intend to sell your property for somebody else to live in the house you used to live in, I don't see any way this helps your property value.
I was just going to say, I tend to agree with the gentleman who spoke about the property whose value is going to be increased is the industrial site, and the residential values around are either going to stagnate or decrease. And I think if I lived in this neighborhood, I'd be in absolute shock, because the Wake County zoning was low-density residential, and there was another Lower Swift Creek, which is agricultural. And I think even some of our projected land use plans were a community center. So this is totally going 180 degrees in the opposite direction. It's less community centered and simply focused on this heavy industrial development. So I just think it's an enormously big change, and the people who are going to be bearing the cost of this are really not going to be seeing, they might be seeing some benefits from Wake County property taxes that Wake County still gets from this property. But other than that, I don't see how they benefit at all. And I think if I was one of them, I'd be opposed to it as well.
And I think you made a good point about, or I think it's the Upper Neuse, Lower Neuse area study in Wake County. That was devised without the input of the town of Clayton. And I think that's an important consideration of this being a growth area, potentially not only for the town, but I live right next to a distribution facility in downtown, western side of downtown. And, their neighbors just as good as my neighbors that live right next to me in a home. I think the reality is too that the property owner does have certain rights to be able to develop their property. And I think we all understand that, but it's a matter of the use itself. And I think it's going to be incumbent on the developer, whoever comes here, whether it's this team or somebody else, to do right by the community. But that being said, if they don't move forward, or however this board decides and the way town council decides, they're going to turn around, resubmit an application and try to do it again, and maybe in a slightly different variation, but ultimately the development will come. So as in the time that I've been up here too, I've encouraged a constant communication between the development team and the neighbors that surround it to ensure that your properties can be maintained to your satisfaction, but they can also do what they see fit with their property. That's going to be incumbent on town staff, the applicant, and the neighbors to continuously stay on top of that if this moves forward. I think this property has a lot of good value for the town if it were to come into town. And I just don't think there's going to be much difference that we make in rejecting it. And certainly if town council decides to do that, that's their prerogative. But if I look at what they provided here, I see this as a perfectly fine project within the confines of our ordinance. Now, I would like to see more buffers, and that is something that is going to be asked by the neighbors time and time again, especially when they see grading happening on the site. But if the applicant is not interested in offering that right now, I presume that members of the town council will request that of them. So I am generally supportive of this. I can make a motion, but I'll see what others on the board think.
It's time for someone to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. The motion to approval inconsistent with the future land use map. I make a motion to recommend approval of the Stoughton Crossing conditional rezoning, the associated concept plan and conditions of approval. This request is inconsistent with the adopted 2045 comprehensive growth plan, and that the development is located outside the town's planning jurisdiction and is not included in the 2045 comprehensive growth plan or the future land use map. The request is specifically inconsistent in that the properties are classified in the Wake County Comprehensive Plan Development Framework as community in the Lower Swift Creek Land Use Plan as agricultural and forestry. The adjacent properties within the Clayton ETJ are designated low-density residential on the town's future land use map. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, and that the request would increase the percentage of town lands that allow for commercial and industrial land use to be developed, supporting economic development and employment growth in an area of the Research Triangle region experiencing increased commercial development interests. If approved, the future land use map designation of the property will be designated as an employment center, which envisions a variety of industrial and commercial uses that support employment and economic development opportunities.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
No. Hearing a mixture, I would ask that we do that by raise of hands. So all in favor, raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3 in favor. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion does not carry. Our recommendation to the board, to the town council, is not to approve.
Chair Dupree, if I may do a roll call on that vote, we weren't able to capture all the votes. If I may, all those in favor of the motion, and I'll start, just say yes or no as I roll down your name. Chair Dupree,
No.
Vice Chair Applewhite,
Yes.
Board Member Sarowski, Board Member Bland, Board Member Carter,
Yes.
Board Member Hooker, Board Member Hall,
No.
Board Member Durham. So the recommendation does not pass.
Recommendation is not passed. Now, keep in mind, folks, this is our recommendation to the town of Clayton. The town council is the ultimate decider of that, but our recommendation at this point to them.
So the motion fails to
Yeah,
pass,
motion
so there
fails
should
to
be
pass.
another motion.
So there needs to be another motion to recommend denial to town council.
Yes.
Correct.
Anyone like to make that motion?
You want to make the simple version of the motion?
Yes, we don't have to. We have to read every word out to make the simple motion.
For the record, yes, please.
That's why nobody ever wants to volunteer to make a motion. Who would like to make the motion? Yeah, I can't. Do it, Randall. I'm nominating you. Can you read it out, please?
Yes, sir. I make a motion to recommend denial of the town of conventional rezoning. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one, sorry. Sorry, we're in the wrong page. In the wrong one. Someone else read it, I can't find it. I make a motion to recommend denial of this rezoning request. While the request is consistent with the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan in that the development is located outside the town's planning jurisdiction.
You're reading the wrong one.
He handed this one to me. This- We've got so many
Read
motions.
motion 4. Motion 4.
Okay. I make a motion to recommend denial of this rezoning request. While the request is inconsistent with the adopted, I'm sorry?
That's the one. You're right. You
Okay.
got it. Go ahead.
Is inconsistent with the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan in that the development is located outside the town's planning jurisdiction and is not included in the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan or future land use map. The request is specifically inconsistent in that the properties are classified in the Wake County Comprehensive Plan Development Framework as community and in the Lower Swift Creek Land Use Plan as agriculture and forestry. Adjacent properties within the Clayton ETJ are designated low-density residential on the town's future land use map. This action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the current zoning designation or a similar designation within the town of Clayton is preferable for the area.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Conrad, would you do the roll call again? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Starting with Chair Dupree.
For that motion, yay.
Correct. This is a motion in favor of, this is a vote for, be in favor of the motion that is a motion for denial and motion number 4.
I vote yay.
Vice Chair Applewhite,
No.
Board Member Sarowski.
No.
Board Member Bland,
Yes.
Board Member Carter,
No.
Board Member Hooker. Board Member Hall,
Yes.
and Board Member Durham. The motion passes. 5 votes in favor and 3 against.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks, for being here this evening.
Chair, can we request just like a 3-minute break as we?
Yeah, we can do that.
People out.
Request has been a 3-minute break, so if anyone wants to hang around for the next item on the agenda, we'll convene back in 3 or 4 minutes. If you've had a knee replacement, you get 5 minutes. Good evening. We are back. I will tell you before we get to the next item on the agenda, we called an audible up here during the break, and we are adjusting the agenda item A under section 5, the planning board training session. We are kicking that can down the road to July. If anybody has any objections to that, do we have a motion to support an adjustment to the agenda?
Motion to adjust the agenda to move the planning board training session to a later date.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We are now in the public meeting section, section 4, item B, the 2026 081 RZ Town Conventional Rezonings, and Lori Bryant is coming up.
Good evening, Chair and Planning Board. My name is Lori Bryant, Planner 1 with the Town of Clayton Planning Department. This evening, I'm going to be presenting an item initiated by the town, 2025-081 RZ Town Properties Rezoning, a conventional rezoning request to rezone 3 individual town-owned properties. Parcel 1 is 108 acres, currently located within the town limits following an annexation that was approved on April 20th, 2026 of this year, as the parcel was previously located in the town's ETJ. The parcel can be found on the north side of Jack Road, off of South Essex Lane, west of Government Road. Parcel 2 is 33 acres and it's located north of Jack Road, west of Court Lane and Applewood Drive. Staff should note that this parcel is currently in Johnston County's jurisdiction. The property was previously annexed by the town during the council meeting on April 20th, 2026 of this year. The effective date of this annexation is scheduled for June 30th of 2026 via the ordinance 2026-0403. Parcel 3 is 0.88 acres. It is currently located within the town limits following the annexation on April 20th, 2026. This parcel was previously located in the town's ETJ, and parcel 3 is located at 151 Short Johnson Road, which is northwest of the intersection of Short Johnson Road and Veterans Parkway. All 3 of these are currently vacant and or wooded, and they have a combined total acreage of 143 acres. The purpose of this rezoning request is to ensure that all town-owned parcels are uniformly zoned as public facilities and to be regulated in a consistent manner. The rezonings of these parcels will align their zoning destination with other town-owned properties, and this will promote consistency and effective administrative land use. This rezoning request was noticed, and these are the locations of where these signs were posted on June 11th ahead of this meeting. The slide before you shows maps of the current and proposed zoning for parcels 1 and 2 for residential large lot and county designation of agricultural residential to public facilities. I should note that there are currently no development plans for these 2 parcels. Should development be proposed in the future, that proposal will be subject to review and approval processes of the ordinance and the development standards of that particular time. This map shows the current and proposed zoning of parcel 3, which is proposed to be rezoned from residential large lot to public facilities. And again, for this lot, there are no proposals at this time. However, it is used to help facilitate the Southwest Center that is being currently reviewed. So the town's future land use maps designates parcel 1 as agricultural and rural residential. It's intended to allow for low density residential development and the preservation of large agricultural tracts. Although this request is not consistent with the future land use map, the request does support the overall growth of the 2040 growth plan by ensuring adequate capacity for the expansion and the maintenance of town facilities and services that are necessary for Clayton's growing population. Along with the public facilities designation, staff recommends that the future land use map be updated to incorporate a neighborhood center overlay on this particular parcel, and that just allows for the limited uses of civic and governmental institutional uses. For parcel 2, the future land use map currently does not include parcel 2, since this parcel is currently located within the county's jurisdiction until the effective date of June 30th. At this time, it will become a part of Clayton's corporate limits, and with that public facilities designation, an assigned future land use map designation of agricultural, rural, residential with a residential overlay will be requested at town council. And again, this will allow for future, for limited number of civic and institutional uses. So parcel 3 here, the town's future land use map does designate parcel 3 as a medium density residential with a neighborhood center overlay. And this supports areas that have access to major thoroughfares and public utilities. The request to rezone to public facilities for this parcel is consistent with this designation, and given that it would allow for the government institutional uses. Now, despite the inconsistency of parcels 1 and 2 with the future land use map, parcel 3 is consistent with the future land use map. The request as a whole is supportive of the intent and the broader goals of the comprehensive growth plan. For one, it preserves Clayton's character while accommodating growth and development. It promotes the location and intensity of development in the manner that mitigates impacts to the transportation network. And it also promotes investment in the utility infrastructure that supports the land use patterns envisioned by the future land use map. The request also is considered very reasonable in the public interest as it supports the expansion of services necessary to accommodate population growth and allows the continuation and expansion of civil and emergency services. Here's a list of motions you may act on. As a reminder, the town of Clayton is, the planning department is recommended the highlighted motion in red, and that is also found in your agenda packets. And that is the end of my presentation. We are open for any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of staff?
Sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What's the building on parcel 3?
It is an abandoned home.
Okay.
Yes, so it is currently not occupied at the time, yes.
Sarasky?
Is the reason for this rezoning to the PUB zone, is there an intended use on these besides parcel 3? I think we know what the use on parcel 3 is going to be, but there's an intended use on parcel 1 and 2 for the purposes that we needed to rezone it to something? Is there something on the list that we want to go towards, or?
Well, again, it is a town-owned property, so just for consistency, we want to make sure that all of the town-owned properties have that same designation. That does, like I said, allow for the expansion of the police department, things like fire, EMS, their training facilities, those sorts of future uses. But again, nothing has came in just yet. Yeah.
Any other questions of staff? Ms. Hooker?
So just to be clear, any future plan use would be subject to all the usual reviews?
Yes, ma'am, it will be.
Derek?
I think it's helpful to understand for PUB, when the town effectively goes through a rezoning, what the requirements are for the town versus a typical applicant that would do a conventional rezoning. Could y'all walk through just what the process is for the town to conduct the rezoning versus a typical development applicant?
Sure. So there's no different process for town-initiated projects. They go through the same process of whether that's a pre-application meeting, going through the TRC review, the technical review committee. They go through that same review process, and then just again, depending on which application process they have to go through, staff approval, or either like for this one, planning board, town council, that sort of thing. So there's no distinction between a town project and just a regular application.
Sorry, Chair, Board Member Vice Chair Dupree, just a comment on that about neighborhood meetings. There is a UDO section that says townwide and town-initiated rezonings don't have to go through the neighborhood meeting process. So that is one difference with respect to a town-initiated rezoning versus an applicant-driven rezoning.
Okay, so in the neighborhood meeting, the typical process is there would be a buffer that the applicant would send mailers to say, we're going to have a neighborhood meeting on this date. All the folks affected by the rezoning could ask questions. And that's currently not required for the town-wide initiated rezonings.
So we would look at, when you have 3 parcels, we would look at that as a town-wide, town-initiated rezoning to get these parcels from their current designations into the PUB district. So we didn't.
And are these all the parcels that we, as the town, would want to rezone at this time? Like, are they all the town-owned properties that need to go through rezoning?
Right, as of right now, no. There are some other parcels that are not zoned PUB that the town owns that are not currently.
Why aren't they part of this?
So a good example is the new Robertson Mule building here in downtown. So the town owns that one. Currently, it's not zoned PUB, and so that's why we didn't include that specific parcel in this project. So there's a couple of parcels that at this time staff felt that since these parcels were recently annexed by the town council recently, we thought this was a good opportunity for these 3 parcels to go forward and to be rezoned PUB for consistency.
Okay, and just for clarity, and I appreciate the background, of the possible town-owned parcels that we would want to rezone to PUB, these 3 are the only ones right now.
Correct,
and there may be
correct.
others that we just haven't decided what zoning designation they need yet.
Correct. And town did have some internal discussion about, is it town-wide? Is it within the town? And having that nomenclature clarified in the UDO is something that we're going to be doing going forward. So that can be some of the confusion internally we discussed. The intent of this was to facilitate these sort of alignments with town-owned properties to be zoned the same zoning district throughout the town.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Anyone else for staff?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we need to circle back on this whole thing about neighborhood meetings. If we're requiring developers to do this, I think we should live by our own rules. So I know that's outside the scope of what we're talking about here, but I think we might want to look at that one later if we're requiring everybody else to do it. So.
Anyone else have a question for the staff? Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
This is part of the public meeting this evening. Is there anyone who wishes to speak from the public in regards to this particular item on our agenda? Please come forward if you would, state your name and your address. And you have 3 minutes. Go right ahead.
My name is Melvin Skinner, 1290 Corbett Road. I live right up in that little corner there. This borders me, behind me and inside me. I've leased this property to 107 acres for the last 30-some years, so it's personal to me. My question is, I know when the town bought it, we were aware of all that when it happened. We were under understanding that it was going to be a park. That's what we were told. My biggest question is what was it zoned as and what are y'all trying to zone it to? I don't understand that. I'm new to this. I just don't want to see it zoned for something in 2 years. You guys decide to sell it and then it's already zoned for something like this other guy was wanting to do tonight. I don't understand. I just want to understand that.
I think they're trying to zone it to be just zoned as public use. This is a public use designation for
what does that mean for us?
What the gentleman was wanting to do earlier is not necessarily
Yeah,
public
I know
use.
that was totally different, but what I want to know is what does that mean for everybody living around?
Conrad, would you like to answer that question for him? We don't
I'm not
have
a
to give,
zoning
we
guy,
don't
so
have
I
to
don't
give
know what
answers
it
in
all
public
means.
comment, but I would like to give you an answer for that.
Thank you.
So which property?
In general,
Okay.
The big one.
Okay. So the existing zoning is RLL for that property.
And that is?
That is residential large lot.
Okay.
And what we are proposing is to rezone it to public facilities, which is a zoning designation that only the town properties have in Clayton, and that is to accommodate future public facilities. So as Lori said, it could be anything from fire, police, a park, things like that in the future. But typically all town properties are zoned public facilities. So since it is town owned, it's just bringing that designation forth. And then in the Unified Development Code, there are specific things that would be permitted in the public facilities district.
But before any of that would happen later on,
it's got to come back.
it would be another meeting or
That's
something.
right.
And we'd be explaining what was happening.
Well, here's the thing, though. They're not required to give a public meeting notice. So whereas it would be, that'd be something discussed at a staff level and at a town council level, but they're not required to send out notices to you that there's going to be discussion about it like a builder or somebody like that would. There's a different set of rules for municipalities.
And also to add to that, if it is a use that is permitted by right, which means it doesn't need to go to council for approval, then if this were rezoned, the town would just be able to move forward with the site plan for development of the property. Something that we can do, though, is if you keep an eye on our development map, any application that is submitted would have to be indicated on that map so the public can be aware of what is coming and what is proposed on these different parcels.
Okay, thank you.
I think part of my question got answered, but Kent Davis, 3080 Barber Mill Road. But on that 33-acre tract to the left, I own 4 properties that back up to that. Now, if I understood, that has not been annexed yet, and the other has?
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm sorry, which property would that be?
The long, slender section.
That's parcel 2, I think, on the map.
Parcel 2, it has been voted for annexation and it will come into effect at the end of this month. So the council approved it, but we were able to delay that effective date of annexation and that will come into effect at the end of this month.
Yeah, but the bigger piece already has been.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. In that annex process, that will be in the city limits?
Correct. All 3 properties the 2 that are not what we're talking about are currently now within the town corporate limits, and then that slender piece will eventually on Jack Road will be part of the town corporate limit.
Even though my property butts up to it, I'm not going to be in the city limits?
Correct.
Right now?
Correct.
Okay. Well, until it's actually known what the property is going to be used for, I have a lot of questions. And maybe this one can be answered. The 33 acres was pretty much purchased because that's the only way to get a road in there unless Corbett comes all the way through to Jack. Does anybody know about the road situation?
So looking at the comprehensive transportation plan, the connection would bring Corbett Road down to Jack Road.
The what?
The town's comprehensive transportation plan, we would have Corbett Road extend down into Jack Road.
So it will be a thoroughfare all the way through? Yeehaw.
Let me just double check it. Yeah, the terminus of Corbett Road.
So you're saying it would go from Corbett to Jack?
Let's see, Jack Road. Yeah, we've identified that as a road, as a future road that the town would connect Corbett Road down to connect to Jack Road.
Okay, well, Ben, that's pretty much established. If that takes place, what kind of buffer would the town put for a road through there to our properties? Or do they have any guidelines?
As far as the actual delineation of that, I'm not exactly sure how that buffer would be. Usually what we would have is the town's code and ordinance, the Unified Development Ordinance has a perimeter buffer that would be from the property line that's not adjacent to the street. So whenever there's a road there, we would have what's called as a streetscape buffer. But as far as the road, the distance of the road from the adjacent property lines, I'm not 100% sure as to where that road's alignment would be at this time.
I feel like we're getting far afield, so let's get back to where we're at. Thank you, sir. If you would, a few 3 minutes. Anyone else?
William Lineback, I live at 205 Long Needle Drive, Clayton. Just clarification on the last gentleman's conversation or questions. There is a plan to connect Corbett Road that extends through parcel 2. Is that what was said?
That's what Conrad said.
Corbett Road down slightly to the southeast through parcel 2 to connect to Jack Road. Is that correct?
The transportation plan has the connection from Corbett Road to go through the both properties and connect to Jack Road. That's likely an alignment because there's an existing neighborhood directly to the south of that second parcel. So the alignment of it, I would assume, would connect to Jack Road somehow.
Okay. That was all. Just I wanted clarification. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Williams, 43 South Tudos. I'm new at this. If you'll indulge me, maybe someone will answer a question. For several years, we've tried to purchase some of that property, which ours backs up to. Not a lot, just to give us a buffer down to the stream. There's a stream down at the bottom, about maybe 70 yards away. I was wondering if there's a method where we can approach the town to purchase land and see if they'd want to sell it and make some money off it and get tax value out of it rather than just sitting there for a while. Is there a method for that?
That's not a question for this board to answer.
Maybe one of the town planners people know the answer to that.
We can connect you with our economic development department. The economic development department with Joe Stallings. He's not to pass him a buck, but well, literally.
What's the name of the person there, sir?
His name is Joe Stallings.
Joe?
He's in the back. Yeah, he's in the back of the room right there. Joe, if I could pass the buck to you, this is it.
Here's a guy who can talk. Thank you.
Let's talk about small towns get done.
Hey, I'm Barbara Poole. I live at 3249 Jack Road, which is right there at the well, you know what I mean. The 33 acres. I'm 300 feet from that. Where exactly is Corporate Road?
It's on the very top of that map, man. Right there.
Orange. Oh, right up there. I see it. Isn't that out by Veterans Parkway?
My grandfather's farm.
Or is that more over that way? Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Any other members of the public to be heard tonight? Okay, sir, come on down.
My name is Russell Poole. I also live at 3249 Jack Road. It was my wife that was just up here. My question is, if this is being annexed as part of Clayton, is this going to raise our property taxes?
I can't, unless you live in that spot, you don't, so.
I'm also concerned about electrical bills. I know people in Clayton pay high electric bills.
This doesn't put you in the city limits.
It does not put us in the city limits.
No, this is all publicly owned property. Yeah, this is not, doesn't affect your property as far as being in the city limits is concerned.
All right, that's what it,
as a reminder, what Derek said earlier, Mr. Applewhite said earlier, that you can only be annexed you cannot be annexed in involuntarily. You have to approve it. You have to yourself approve to be annexed.
And approve it.
And be requested to go. So just because this is being annexed doesn't mean any property around it is annexed. It's just that one property.
This is being annexed because the town owns it.
Okay.
But otherwise, they don't just go out and spot annex and take your property and put you in the town.
Thank you very
that
much.
happened.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Irwin. I live at 2798 Jack Road. Kennedy Landing was named after my grandfather, Ruffin Kennedy. I live in his house that we've renovated. Next to that, which is basically just to the right of those blue lines, is my mother's house, and then right next to that is my sister's house. Across the street is my uncle's house. The grassy area in between the houses that are on the right and those lines is owned by my aunt who lives just up the street here. So when I looked at public use and examples of public use buildings, one of the things I saw was a water sewage treatment plant. So I guess the reason I got sent here is because we want to safeguard against the possibility of there being a water sewage treatment plant right there. And so the idea of connecting Corbett Road and Jack Road, it's going to, tear out a whole bunch of everything in order to do that. Probably going to come right up next to my family's land and all this good stuff. But that pales in comparison to me to the thought of having to be concerned with the idea that it's possible that a water sewage treatment plant could be moved into that area. So that's really the only thing I wanted to just get off my chest and ask for the ladies I have at home that are curious about this, all right? Thank you. I'll take your comments over here.
I don't think we have any comments. No idea. It's public property, public land, and at some point, the public will use it for some public use, but we're not here tonight to say what that is or decide what it is. I don't think nothing's been talked about, certainly not with this board.
And Chair Dupree, if I may, there's no capital improvement projects the town has to expand beyond what we currently are expanding at just up the road on the O'Neill for wastewater treatment facilities.
Right. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing no more public comment, I'll close the public hearing portion of this, and I will entertain motion from this board. I'm just looking around.
One thing I will say, and to Board Member Carter's point earlier, that we need to hold the town to the same standards that we hold other entities and developers that come before the planning board and town council. I think that's important. Also, it begs the question of what could go here. And I know we've heard concerns of what could go here. And I hope that when the conversations with previous property owners that own these properties and were made, whether it was handshake promises or otherwise, that those could also be kept. But it does beg the question of all that entire list of uses, what could be provided in those lists of uses. So that's something we all need to consider and expect that town staff and town council does their due diligence to ensure that it's not something that's going to be adverse to anyone that has made comments here tonight or otherwise.
I will say that the town owns that property. So however it is zoned, no decision we make here tonight affects what the town can do with that property at some point in the future. They own the property. They would, they could petition to do something different with it at some point in the future. We're just putting it into a public zoning tonight. So, or not putting it in public zoning. We're having to make a motion one way or the other.
So as a matter of procedure, since we're talking about three different parcels, we need two separate motions. Is that correct? One for, it looks like the options we've been presented, we have to separate out parcel 3 from parcels 1 and 2?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you for that reminder. One of the second parcel on the image on the left, one that's on Jack Road, would require a separate motion. So I've conveniently made the colors. red for parcel 3 and blue for parcels 1 and 2.
All right. I'll take parcel 3 then. Take one for the team. I recommend approval consistent with the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan. I move to make a motion recommending approval of the town PUB conventional rezoning identified as parcel 3 of the request and North Carolina PIN 165801-15-2514 based on consistency with the future land use map, goals, policies, and/or strategies in the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan, in that it is consistent with, number one, the future land use map designates the property as medium-density residential with a neighborhood center overlay. Goal LU1, preserve Clayton's character while allowing for growth and development in appropriate areas. Policy LU 1.6, promote location and intensity of development that mitigates impacts to the transportation network and leads to reduced vehicle trips and/or shorter trip lengths, enhance circulation, and increase public safety. Goal SI1, invest in utility infrastructure that supports land use patterns envisioned by the future land use map. This action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the comprehensive growth plan strives to ensure the capacity of civic and emergency-related services as the population grows. The requested rezoning permits uses that allow for expansion and continuation of civic and emergency-related services.
I have a motion from Board Member Carter. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Board Member Hooker. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Do I have another motion? All right,
I make a motion to recommend approval of the town PUB conventional rezoning identified as parcels 1 and 2 of the request and NC Pens 164-700-85-1743 and 164-700-94-1412 respectively. While the proposed rezoning is generally consistent with the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan, in that goal LU1 preserves Clayton's character while allowing for growth and development in appropriate areas. Policy LU1-6 promotes location and intensity of development that mitigates impacts to the transportation network and leads to reduced vehicle trips and/or shorter trip lengths, enhanced circulation, and increased public safety. Goal SI1, invest in utility infrastructure that supports land use patterns envisioned by the future land use map. It is inconsistent in that the property identified as parcel 1, NC Pen 164-700-85-1743, is designated as low-density residential in the future land use map, which restricts the intended uses within the proposed district. The property identified as parcel 2, NC Pen 164-700-94-1412, is undesignated in the future land use map. This action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the Comprehensive Growth Plan strives to ensure the capacity of civic and emergency-related services as the population grows, and the requested rezoning permits uses that allow for expansion and continuation of civic and emergency-related services.
all right, we have a motion from Board Member Hooker. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second from Board Member Durham. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We did amend our new business tonight to kick item A, Planning Board Training Session, down the road to July. And so we will now go to Section 5, Item B, Shipping Container Presentation, and staff is making a presentation to us now.
Great. Chair Dupree, members of the board, Conrad Olmedo, Planning Director for the town of Clayton. This is a presentation To follow up on staff's Unified Development Ordinance text amendments 1-26 that was given to council, to the board at the last month. So this presentation is a follow-up. This presentation also mimics some of the materials that were provided to council at their work session. So if there's a duplication of that, you can see that. So quick introduction, storage containers, brief introduction, availability, some example uses, some concerns, a notice of violation, some changes done in the text amendments from 125, considerations, staff analysis and recommendation, and any questions. So storage containers, these can be found on residential, commercial, and industrial properties. Last year, we identified 21 observations, and recently, one notice of violation was upheld by the Board of Adjustment for the removal of a shipping container per the new Unified Development Ordinance. Some of the reasons that we hear about these shipping containers that they provide an affordable solution to storage capacity on a property. They're often caveated as being the temporary use, but they end up being left on a property for an unknown duration of time. Typically not permitted by the North Carolina Building Code. There's some alternative uses, alternative compliance measures that you might see a little bit later this evening. But the UDC treated these as temporary and residential and provided some permitted uses with the zoning compliance permit for industrial related use zone properties. The UDO treats these as temporary, and we did revise these in our UDO 125, but they still remain as a temporary intended structure on property. So they are available to the community. These are just some examples of some websites that do provide them there, but we can kind of get an idea. These are structures that are meant to be used for moving cargo, moving material, using shipping on cargo. We've all seen the big boats with these, some trains. And for temporary storage, when someone was moving the house, they'll get one of these units and have it move from one location to the next. So some town uses, this is in our PUB zoning district, our operations center. So the town does have some of these facilities, some of these structures. You can see that they're far from the public right of way. Some industrial uses. This is where some existing, and I will caveat that most of these shipping containers have been in existence pre the UDO's adoption. Get an idea of just when they are put on a property and how they just kind of end up being there and accumulating what some could consider as additional material adjacent to the units. In some commercial areas, we do have some other types of temporary storage options for some local businesses, such as using tractor trailers. In residential uses, some of these might have been removed. I've spoken with our code enforcement officers, and some of these might not be at the current location to date. But back in last year, they were located there. So this is a residential kind of temporary placement of one. On construction sites, which is where we will most likely find these units. So they're tied to a building permit. So when the building permit is wrapped up, there's a certificate of occupancy provided. These shipping containers are then moved from that location and placed on another location. Some structures, some of these have been in place pre-UDO, so they're out there. You'll see them in the neighborhoods. And just placed on property. And so some concerns with these is, again, accumulation of materials, debris, footings you can see on the bottom right there. They've got them stacked on some, looks like some bricks. Stacking of them occurring, and sometimes the business might employees might actually be on a forklift and they'll be able to access that second story, that stacked shipping container, which can pose as a hazard for safety. They can also be placed on asphalt, which would take up any required off-street parking spaces. And this is the violation that was initiated last year at 101 Bestwood Drive. This was work without a permit. Our code enforcement officers did resolve the issue with regards to the construction material, but you can see that the material that the shipping container is on appears to be on dirt. A little bit of a gravel parking lot. This is the violation that was upheld by the Board of Adjustment. So we're sensitive to this type of use occurring in town. So that's where there was some changes done that were resultant from conversations with this business owner at the time. And staff did present some changes to the UDO to reflect some of those conversations. So they're limited in the PUB district. Residential uses, they're restricted in terms of size, length, and as well as in commercial, and as well as a number of these uses. For matters of presenting to you what was approved by council is the use of in our public facilities zoning district to allow these types of structures as a request from our public works department to allow bulk material that's typically used for sand that's going to be spread on asphalt when there's an ice storm coming. Just that there was a need for having that material covered that's currently not covered. And this is a engineered design plan. So it would be getting building permits. And so that is a tie to the storage containers to get a building permit in the case of a membrane structure. Some considerations that was presented to council. So to continue to use as a temporary use, stay with the duration of time and the standards. Consideration 2, to continue to treat as a temporary use, but seek permit as a secondary use, provided that it meets North Carolina Building Code. Consideration number 3 is to remove regulation and to align with no enforcement action. So no permits or standards exist to allow property owner to use and place on the property. So that would allow those to occur. So this is excuse me. So in terms of analysis, when the UDC was in effect and the UDO became adopted, this type of structure was now treated as a temporary type of structure. So the UDO did not bring these structures, mimic the language that was in the UDC to treat them in a way that would allow them to continue to be used in a permanent capacity. The Board of Adjustment upheld this notice of violation on the shipping container recently. Staff recommends to continue supporting these structures as temporary solutions to capacity, to material, etc., rather than using these as shipping containers as a storage solution, but to encourage actual construction of detached structures, building additions to existing facilities so that staff we can increase property tax values in that manner, and support them as permanent improvements to the property. With that, I'm available if you have any questions.
Does anyone have questions of staff about shipping containers?
So you found 21 occurrences. Is that are you confident that's pretty exhaustive? Did they do a pretty good search or?
Yeah, last year there was, we had 2 code enforcement officers go around and identify the properties in which I had an update as of this afternoon, and I was given 13. So some of those have been removed. So I've got 13 that were identified out there. Some of them, 3 of those are tied to active building permits, and most of them, about 7 of them, are in existing LID zone properties.
And so the ones that are on current construction projects, they're already allowable as temporary structures?
Correct. They'll come in as part of the building permit. There's no, you know how construction will work. So they'll have a temporary office as well on the site, and all that is removed after the building permit is given a certificate of occupancy.
Can we look at your slide 5 for 1 second, please?
I'm not sure.
The PUB, the town one. Am I correct in seeing conduit run to one of those storage containers? Electrical conduit? Meaning they've wired that one?
I'm not sure where we're looking at right now. Are you looking at
middle picture, the container on the left, looks like it's got conduit run into it on the side of it?
It looks like that.
Yeah,
I can't
okay.
confirm if that conduit is providing any power to that shipping container.
Okay. I think in general, that's one that we've got to have a hard no on. But I guess it's open to discussion. That was one I saw that bothered me in the presentation. That's something in general I feel strongly we can't allow that in a container. So, in a temporary container like this.
If that's what it is.
If that's what it is.
Understood. I'll talk to the Public Works Director tomorrow.
Any other comments or questions to staff on shipping containers? Mr. Rasky?
Is our goal here to make a recommendation as a board
Not
or not?
necessarily, no.
Okay. This is for informational purposes only. Okay. I just wanted to be sure.
I will probably make a motion at the end. A short one.
Anything else for staff?
And
Okay, thank you. I believe we have someone that had asked to speak to this matter from the public, and I think it's the gentleman who had the violation. Sir, I'll give you the same opportunity we gave everybody else, 3 minutes.
My name is Richard Shacker, and my street address residence is 208 Caraway Lane in Cary, North Carolina. My business address is 101 Bestwood Drive, and I'm here today representing my business interests as the notice violation that Conrad pointed out was actually on the property in which we are leasing. Bear with me here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to participate tonight. I'm sure that staff has had just about enough of me on this container, and some of you might feel the same, and that's fair. There are 3 considerations in front of you tonight that Conrad presented, town staff presented. Consideration 3 is not real regulation, and no one here is likely to adopt that. Consideration 1 is status quo, do nothing. And the status quo hasn't solved the problem, in my opinion, because I believe that our usage is legitimate. So it seems to me that consideration 2 is the only one that actually does solve the problem. It's your own staff's opinion, or an option that they presented, I apologize, and it's a straightforward one. And it checks every box. So just for illustration here, does it solve the problem? Yes. Safe outdoor storage of long building materials. I have extension ladders, I have decking boards and other things that we need to store there. Check. Is it legal and code compliant? Yes, it is. It is allowed under the town's prior UDC as well as buildable to North Carolina Building Code. So check. My proposal is limited in scope. Outdoor storage, light industrial only. We're not talking about residential, retail. We're not talking about making it occupiable in any way. No offices, no dwellings. This is outdoor storage. Check. I believe that the concerns that Mr. Conrad presented can be handled by standards. You know, people leaving debris and stuff around their property, it seems to me that that should be enforceable regardless. And so I'm going to say check on that one. It can be handled, and it's enforceable, right? We can provide a clear rule that staff can apply consistently. I have been clear in every communication with the town staff, with the Board of Adjustment, and this board that I am willing and prepared to meet building codes and reasonable standards. This question has been open since 2025. We have an open problem and an open question, and tonight we have a path forward to solve it. Consideration 2, as Conrad presented it, is that path. And I respectfully ask you to please send a recommendation to council for consideration 2. Thank you. Any questions?
I have no questions, brother. Thank you. I will say this. I know you all discussed this some at the last meeting. Here's my feeling on it. Board can make any recommendations that they want to make. If this were a widespread issue with lots of people using these and having the same situation he's got, that's a different story. I don't think it's widespread. And I don't think this board should be a second line of defense for someone who's not happy with the Board of Adjustment's decision. They're a quasi-judicial board that made a decision and found against his appeal. Sir, there's no more comments. We've already had the public comment portions, and no more of that. I just don't think this board's job is to come behind the adjustment board and be a second line of defense for someone who wasn't happy with the Board of Adjustment. I don't think it's our spot to get involved with that. Now, any of you can make any recommendation you want to make, and we can vote on those things, but that's my feeling on it. I do think that there was nothing that's decided here tonight is going to negate the fact that this particular situation is in violation, and by the end of this month, certainly in violation. So there's nothing that's going to be decided here that's going to change that.
Chair, let me make one point. I agree with a lot of what you said, but the one thing.
Agree with all of it?
Not all of it.
Okay.
But the one thing this board can do is help advise the town council of making changes to code where code changes need to be made if there are situations that are unjust or aren't met, or, you know, just opinionated. So I agree with everything you said. We're not going to go back on what the Board of Adjustment did. It is where we are with this property, but do we have the opportunity to try to change the code so that something like this doesn't happen again, so people have more opportunities to be able to use storage containers? I think that's the question that we're being asked. And I think that's the question that we should potentially answer. Whether that happens tonight or not, I'm not sure of. I was going to take this as information and take it and not, hopefully there wasn't going to be a motion, but if there is, I'm not going to stop anyone from doing it. My take is that we just made these changes. That's one of the reasons why the Board of Adjustment voted the way they voted is, well, one, they have to follow the letter of the law. I mean, they have to. So that's number one. But we just made these changes recently. It's not like this is something that hasn't been talked about recently within.
But I think, did the town not stay some fines and penalties previously on this, or not?
With regards to the changes of the UDO TA 1-25, there was an increase of duration of time, but we didn't change it from being a temporary to now a permanent.
I'm just saying that it's been talked about recently. And that's what I'm saying. If the change was going to be made, it would have been made to make those changes. So I'm more apt to leave what we have right now because of previous conversations that have been made by people before us. And the fact that it could be an eyesore, we just need to be better in enforcing it. That's all.
I agree with that.
So I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about the Board of Adjustment, and their duty is to make an interpretation of the ordinance and make a judgment on that. And I think the current ordinance is clear and there was a violation, and I don't think it's not our place to judge on that. We do have 21 occurrences of these. They are in areas that are light industrial, CRM, RLL. You listed all the areas. I don't think these have a place in residential. What I was considering proposing tonight, I haven't made the motion yet, was that staff get with Inspections Director Alfred, come up with some what could be reasonable specifications for having a storage unit, i.e. can't exceed X percent of the total or square footage of the facility they're at. Screening, some stuff like that, so that some of these business owners that use these can use them in their legitimate business. That was the thought I had on this. I don't like seeing two of these stacked on top of each other. I don't like seeing power to them. But if it's strictly used for storage and a light industrial, I think we could come up with some standards that would work.
I don't think, though, that no matter what the standards are, I think it sets a poor image for the town of Clayton if we ourselves appear to be in violation of the shipping container. I'm looking at you because you represent the town of Clayton tonight. It's not you that put shipping container out there. But I don't think it's okay for us to have them permanently, certainly run electricity to them if that's the case, and then tell other people they can't use them. I don't like that double standard.
And appreciate the comments. I want to, since I am representing the town of Clayton tonight.
You're the representative of the town tonight.
And the whole town within the playing area to an extent. I don't represent town council does, but for us internally, yeah, I think that's a good case in point as to how these shipping containers kind of pop up on sites throughout town. They provide temporary storage, but then they end up being there for quite some time. The town is using these. We have plans to construct more permanent facilities, and this is kind of a pinch point until we get the allocated funding for those improvements. These are really that temporary storage, which is where the language is not. It still doesn't let them be permanent solutions. But what this does point to is we have these legal non-conforming or structures, and what happens is you have a statute of limitations. So we have, if it's visible from the public right of way versus not from the public right of way, the town code enforcement has a certain amount of years at which we can go in there and enforce our regulations. That requires a good amount of research. It could put us in a position of having to defend our notices of violation. And I did not direct our code enforcement staff to go out there and cite these facilities because of the amount of research. And we've taken this approach of they're past the statute of limitations. The new UDO is effective January 2nd of 2024. So that gives us a bit of a buffer as to when the regulations have changed. And that gives us an opportunity when we're out in the field to know, I haven't seen that before when I'm driving around versus, so we now know that it's been about 2 years ongoing that we're going to be having these regulations in effect, and that gives us a good window of a break from these, to have that distance from these pre-existing shipping containers in our town, as well as in our own facilities.
And to the considerations he was pointing out, were they listed in the staff report? I wasn't sure if I'd seen the 3 considerations.
No, there's no staff report with this. The considerations were provided for council for some guidance at the time. So I don't think that's much of a difference, with the exception that subsequent to that presentation a year ago, staff's position right now would be to recommend to keep the standards as they are, to support them as a temporary structure, and seek permanent solutions for these types of issues. They can also get a temporary use permit.
That's right.
As well. So there is still that permit, and that would be something we could work with an applicant.
Turn your microphone on, Randall.
But that's been my biggest problem with this particular situation. If they hadn't added on to that storage unit, under the old UDC, could it stay there forever, basically, if they hadn't added on to it?
So the Board of Adjustment did hold the case, and I just blanked. But, so what happened was, the addition to that, I think, is what drew the attention of our enforcement officer. It's fresh wood. We're looking for signs of change. So if we had a vacant property and we had shipping containers dropped on that, that would be a change. You know, they're out there patrolling, looking to see what is occurring, looking for unpermitted construction, unpermitted uses. And this was one of those cases where the unpermitted construction resulted in further investigation, which led to a realization that that shipping container was not permitted. The UDC had standards, to the gentleman that spoke, Mr. Ritchie, that would have required a zoning compliance permit at the time under the UDC, which in case none was provided to the Board of Adjustment at the evidentiary hearing. So there was that provision in the UDC that would have allowed this structure separate from the construction occurring on the site as well.
Yeah, well, that was my biggest question, because I mean, I personally do not like these at all, like ever, anywhere, sort of thing, but, they are allowed. But that storage unit had been there a long time before they ever added anything onto it. And then he kind of inherited the problem, although he's been using the unit to store stuff in. He kind of inherited the problem, and now he's having to deal with it. That's the part that has bothered me the most about it. And, if it was up to me, the town would never allow them anywhere ever, but, they do have their uses. That I don't think he should, my personal opinion is, and this has nothing to do with the board, but my personal opinion is he shouldn't be punished for something someone else did.
And to that point, during the evidentiary hearing, I know I'm bringing up quasi-judicial matters before the board.
Right.
That evidence was, that their opportunity for evidence to demonstrate that case would have been at the evidentiary hearing. And so the Board of Adjustment made the findings of fact, which included the provided testimony and evidence that were provided at the case with respect to the duration of time in which the shipping container was on the property.
Board Member Carter, if you make a motion, I will second it. And that'd be for consideration for staff.
Yeah, so I will. I appreciate it. So I'd like to make a motion that staff meet with Director Alford to come up with some possible standards and a possible revision to the UDO to allow use of storage containers in designated zones that, including LID, light industrial. As an example, one requirement I would say needs to be there is an NFPA 704 diamond on each storage container, indicating if there's any hazardous materials in there. There needs to be screening. Yeah, that's it.
Is that part of your motion?
Yeah, that's part of the motion is that's a minimum requirement, is a NFPA 704 diamond on all of those for safety reasons. So, yeah.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So real quick, this is a motion to request the staff to look into it. We are not, that's what this is. We're not making a decision. We're just asking the staff to.
It would be a request for a text amendment that can only be brought forward by, staff, members of the planning board, and town council.
And, okay, so it would only be adopted if it's adopted by this board and the town council.
That is correct.
That is correct.
I want us to just go through the whole procedure, make sure everyone's all on the same page.
That is correct. So the motion is that a amendment to the UDO be brought to us that has all of that incorporated in it, so that we at that point can make have a vote on that.
The staff feel like they've adequately captured that motion. Or do we need to restate it?
No, I believe what I've captured so far is, just for clarification, it would be our inspections director, Barry Alston.
Alston, I'm sorry,
Barry
Alston, yes, Barry.
I have noted to come up with standards for a possible UDO text amendment to allow the use of storage containers in designated zones such as LID. Some recommended standards are an NFPA 704 diamond on each container for hazardous materials and screening.
Correct.
And if this was a part of work session deliberations previously, there may be language available somewhere in some documents that were discussed previously, is my presumption, but if not, I guess y'all
We
have
did
to
talk about this one.
create more language.
So we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion on it before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's our recommendation. All right. Anything else anybody's got on their hearts and minds tonight?
Move to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?